Hey folks, Vince the Evil DM here with another edition of Railguns and Dragons. Continuing along part 2 of magic characters, we're going to be going to look at the mystic part of it, the mystic study, which is going to cover the wizard, the illusionist, and the bestowed magical character all in one today. We'll go over those in detail. So let me get right to the book so we can get right into this. Just want to say thank you for all the comments and the likes and everything like that. It does help encourage moving this channel along. After we get done with these classes, I'm probably going to move on to, I believe, Palladium Fantasy or maybe Beyond the Supernatural. I like to go through the core books, and then once I'm done with all the core books and all those classes and things like that, get those out of the way, I could start doing all the world books and all the fun books that people like to see about and hear my thoughts about those. I want to get the base and the core done so we can, talk about the fun stuff. Get the instructional stuff out of the way and then talk about the fun stuff, right, folks? All right, anyway, let's get to the book here. So we're flipping to page 91, and we're talking about the mystic study, the wizard, the art of spell magic, aka the wizard, the spellcaster. So when you're first starting out, there's a GM note here that basically says to roll 3d4 to see how many years you've been studying magic, which it says does normally starts at 14 years of age. This is more of a backgroundy thing compared to anything it really needs. It's kind of, you can use it in your background, how many years you've been studying, how long you've been doing this for, and maybe your GM can incorporate that some way into it, because it doesn't really mention how it's incorporated into the rules. I think it's more of a how long you've been doing it for thing. Spellcasting is limited by physical limitations. It is based on how much your body can take. While it does seem kind of unlimited in a way, it's really not. Spells are committed to memory, and you could use them as you're needed, but you're still limited to how often you can cast those spells. You can only cast a certain amount of spells in a 24-hour period, but you can cast it as many times as you're allowed to cast spells, and you can intermix those spells however you want. It's not like when you're playing something like Dungeons and Dragons and you have access to all these spells and you only have a certain number memorized per day. The spells that you have and know you have memorized, and you can use those spells how you want. They're ingrained in your memory because you've been studying it for so long. Maybe this is where the studying for so long comes into play. As you increase in level, as you can see here, we go over to this page right over here. Right here. Okay. So as you increase the level, your body can absorb more punishment, and you can tolerate more spells that you can cast. And so we're on page 93, and as you can see, at first level, you're only allowed to cast 8 spells, adding more at level 3, 6, 9, and 12. 14 spells that you can, during character creation, you can pick 14 first level spells. And you can cast 2 per melee. And when I say 2 per melee, that means all amongst all your attacks. And some people get that confused with per attack. When they say per melee, they mean per the entire group of attacks that you have. So you can cast, so say you have 4 attacks, you can cast 2 spells. Regardless. Some of them may take up more actions to cast, which is fine. And that's allowed. It just limits the number of actual physical attacks you can do after you cast the spells. That's all it's really stating. Now we just go back to page 92, which is not really important during character creation, but it's interesting to look at because your GM has to work with you, because you as a wizard need a master who taught you your spells. And when you're learning new spells and leveling up, you get entitled to learn new spells. So how do you get these new spells? Well, you can go to your master and study with him for a while. That's option 1. Option 2, a supernatural being grants you new spells and takes a little bit of time to study each of those. Or option 3, self-taught. Now, more than likely, more people are going to do option 1 and 3 because 2 is very unlikely to happen. But with option 1, you have to go study with your master. and you can't be interrupted during that time frame. So your character's out and about, done. Can't do anything else. If he's interrupted, he has to start all over or something. And sometimes the master will even say no. Even says right in there, may say no. You're not ready to learn these yet. So it really depends on your GM. I highly suggest that if you're going to play this class and you're going to do the option number 1, you have a backup character that you can play. And maybe with your GM, you can work out something like the backup character's experience that he gains can go to your wizard character, or half of it goes to it. I've seen things like that. It really depends on your GM and how you handle it. Now, the self-taught way is not always going to work, because you're going to spend a lot of time studying, which allows you to run out and adventure and help save the world. But at the end of when you're ready to cast the spell, after a certain amount of time, is usually no less than 8 months of studying a spell, you can attempt to cast the spell. And then when you attempt to cast the spell, you're going to look at this chart down here. Roll your percentile dice, and this will determine if the spell worked or not. And I'll tell you if it failed and what it does to you, if you got to start back at the drawing board, or it works right off the bat. So those are a couple things you have to realize when you do this. Now, you also get some other abilities for this class that are non-spell magic abilities. They are just kind of natural abilities. So you have astral projection, which you can use, and there's some things about that you can read here. And then you get a familiar link. Obviously, you get a familiar, like a cat, a dog, whatever animal you feel is necessary, or you want to work with your GM. There's a whole limitation here for it. You could recognize enchantment. So you can recognize any magic in any form. This includes magic items, magic weapons, circles, or other magic users, or people controlled or possessed by mystic forces. And there's a % chance that you can do that. You can also sense evil, or I guess if you're an evil, you're going to sense good. Or diabolical. I don't know. Whatever it wants to be. Sense magic. The wizard can sense the presence of magic whenever it's nearby. There's often a chance that you can pinpoint the source applicable to all forms of magic. Now, this sense magic and recognize enchantment seem to me as if they kind of mix together as one. It seems like the same thing over and over, but I guess there's slight differences in how far away you can do it as opposed to right in the general area, so that's why there's 2. I guess sense magic is kind of like how Yoda would sense the Force, is the only way I could think about it. And he gets a general idea of somewhere, somehow, there's a magical force or thing happening. It's in that direction, or it's there. Then when you get to there, you can do a recognize enchantment in the general area. To me, it seems like a split skill that you didn't need or something. But whatever, it's something that you can work on with your GM. So obviously you go up in level, and as you go up in level, you can cast more spells. You get more bonuses to your spell casting and your defense versus spell casting. And then you know, obviously each spell has its own abilities to it, and duration to it, and how many spells it counts as, because not every spell is 1 for 1. Some spells are higher level and they count as more than 1 spell. And there might be some little spells that count as maybe a half a spell or something. You just have to look through it, and then there is the basic magic attack strength for the spell and things like that. You read through that, and it's all self-explanatory. Now we head over to the Illusionist, pretty much, so to speak. This class is much like the Wizard in theory, except you're limited to optical and illusionary effects only. The only real difference is how you learn more spells. You need to go back to your master or find another master of illusionary magic, as these characters can't be self-taught, can't learn from a book. You only get 2 abilities that are non-magical, and those are sense magic and sense evil. You do get some bonuses to saving throw versus illusionary magic. And at first level, you can cast 7 spells versus the 8 spells for wizard, and you only know 10 illusionary spells versus the 14 spells of all the spells that a wizard has. So not only are you limited to certain spells, you get lesser spells to actually know at first level. And finally, we have the mystically bestowed ability, mystically bestowed class, which a player in my game had played this class originally and did not like it whatsoever. Unfortunately, it didn't gel with the way his playstyle is. He didn't like the way the class was, so we had to swap this class out for another one. A person who joined the game on and off did enjoy this class because he kind of liked the concept of it being Shazam type class. So you're a champion of good or evil. You're an ordinary person that changes with a thought or a phrase into the champion with a complete new look, an outfit. It could be however you want to change. It could be a phrase, it could be a thought, and you can look however you want, as the book describes. And your super abilities, first thing off the bat, your IQ and your ME and PE remain unchanged whatsoever. So you're going to have two separate ability tracks here for half the things. So your MA gets increased by 2d6 unless it's below 18, then it becomes an 18. Your PS increased by 2d6 unless it's below 20, it becomes a 20. Increase your PP by 1d6 with a minimum of 18. Your speed is increased by 2d4 with a minimum of 24. And your SDC goes up by 2d4 times 10. So like I said, you're going to have a column of different abilities when you're your normal person or when you're your superhero champion. There's also a table right down here that's absolutely optional, and it's kind of roleplay-ish, and you do get a little bit from it. And sometimes you get a little bit away from things, what you have. But it's to help promote role play, and the player can obviously skip it. You can be an incapacitated person that is a crippled, paralyzed, otherwise impaired, and you may select some physical skills to help compensate things or not. You're an old person, so you add this or that. You're a kid, you're a wimp, you're an invalid. You don't have to use this chart. It's just a fun role play. And most people are probably going to skip it unless they really want to, add a little flavor to their class. If they can figure it out on their own, then fine, let them do it. A thing to note here, and it does have a special note, that negate magic spell can temporarily strip your character of your abilities, transforming you back into an ordinary person. So you have to make a save to get everything back and everything. So now, as far as your abilities are concerned, like your magical abilities that are bestowed upon you, you can either pick from the one major super ability and two minor abilities, or you can pick 8 magical spells from the spell magical category. In the latter case, all spells start at second level versus first level, which you started first. So it's always going to be a level higher than you when you're casting. And you're limited to 8 spells per day to cast, and you never learn new spells if you pick spells whatsoever, regardless of how many spells you get. You do get to cast more spells per day, but you never get new spells whatsoever. Now, there's a random chart here on the bottom that you can roll that I think kind of gives you a better chance of getting something more than what I just noted. Like, you can get 4 magical spells and 2 minor super abilities, or you can get 10 magical spells plus a +1 to save versus magic, or you can get 1 major super ability plus 2 minor super abilities but no magical spells. So, and then there's the opposite end, which you only get 6 illusionary spells and 2 regular magic spells. So you get the good with the bad, or you could just pick what we said below or above. Honestly, it gives you a little more options, but I don't know. That's me. You get your standard 2 attacks per melee. You can only increase that by physical skills. So if you don't pick any physical skills that grant you more attacks, you're stuck with 2 attacks regardless. Your SDC for magically bestowed is going to be 3d4 times 10. And that is the magical classes and the mystically bestowed, the Mystic Part 2. The end of this one here for now, as we're going to go on to the next class and finish up this thing here. Tell me what you think for this series, RailGuns and Dragons. Leave a comment below. Don't forget to hit like and share the videos out. I appreciate that. And don't forget to hit subscribe if it's your first time here. With that said, I'm going to say keep it original, keep it old school, and good night, everybody.